Welcome to Coaching in Session,
where limits end and growth begins.
Hosted by Michael Rearden.
This is your space to challenge the ordinary,
unlock your potential,
and step boldly into your next chapter.
Your mindset journey continues.
Welcome, Angelo Valenti, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. How are you doing, Michael?
Doing well. Thanks so much for coming on. Today, we're going to be having a wonderful conversation. This is something near and dear to my heart. I always talk about this. Mindset is probably like number one, but then psychology is like the number two. And what you do, you are a consulting psychologist and you're a coach. And all of this is going to be dealing with the mind and just how people are operating in their life today. And we can look at the discrepancies of how people used to live life versus how they're living life today. And then maybe even to future think of how people are going to be living life in the future. And of course, there's going to be some discrepancies in how the boomers are thinking versus how Gen Zs are thinking. And one might say, oh, how someone was thinking is wrong versus someone who's thinking today might be thinking they're right. So it's going to be so many different minds going on. But then we look at the common denominator, for people. They want happiness. They want to have a good life. They want to have some level of meaning and purpose. And today is going to be that conversation. As I always like to do in the beginning is for me to kind of give a brief synopsis of what you do, but it only touches the tip of the iceberg. If you could, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and how you truly help people?
Absolutely. Well, I've been a consulting psychologist, had my own firm, the Company Psychologist, since 1982. A little background, I got a bachelor's degree from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, master's and PhD from the University of Georgia. Taught college for a little while, joined a consulting firm for a little while, and in 1982, I set up my own practice. What I spend most of my time doing is helping companies hire the right people for their unique culture. I help them develop leaders and aspiring leaders. And about 3 years ago, I wrote a book entitled You're Making This Way Too Hard, Find Your Easy Way to Enjoy Life. And I've been spending the last 3 years helping more people find inner peace, contentment, and joy in their life, which seems to be more and more difficult to find for a lot of people, maybe than it was in years past.
Yeah, I think of what you say when you help companies like hire the right people. And there's a gym, it's called Crunch Fitness. You've probably seen them around. And they have a new facility that just opened up by my home. It's all state of the art, everything is brand new. But what's the crazy part is they go under this conglomerate of we are a different tribe because we're a certain franchise of the Crunch Fitness brand. And it's so stupid, number one. Number two, we go into how a new facility is going to do as soon as it goes into the market or goes into the public where people can access it and people are seeing it firsthand. Well, there's an older gym also in Round Rock, and it's a little bit south. It's not too far south, maybe just a 10-minute drive. It's not far. And if you look at the Google ratings for the new business versus the old business has like a 4.5 or 4.8. And then the new business has a 3.6 or 3.5 now. It's going down. It's going downhill. And I know why it's going downhill. And I'm not going to tell them unless they want to pay me and I'll go and I'll help them. But they have a management problem. They have a people problem.
Right.
And I say this to open up our conversation, not to talk about Crunch Fitness and how this one gym is doing so bad because of the people they hire, but more of the concept of the generation that is there working. The generation that is in that gym up north, the one that has a very low score, they're very young.
Right.
Even the management's very young versus you go to the other location, everyone's about 10 years older, around there. And I'm talking about service. They know how to do it. I'm talking about they have poor equipment. It doesn't matter. You want to go to that gym versus the new gym. And everyone that goes to that gym knows. And the people who probably go to that gym, it's only convenient to them. So it's like, oh, right next to my house, I'll go to this gym versus the other gym. And I even did something with that. We don't have to talk about it, but it's so interesting how we can have 10 years apart from a generation or from just people working in a company or facility, and you can have drastically different results. Why do you think this is happening in our world today?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons it's happening. One of the big reasons is that I think younger people are used to communicating with other people on their phone, either through texting or chatting. They're not as accustomed to face-to-face conversations. The older people get, when you get up into my generation, that's all we had. We had to communicate with people face-to-face or on the telephone. And I also think another factor is I believe that common courtesy and respect has diminished from generation to generation. I think the older a person is, the more likely they are to treat people with respect and with common courtesy. And a great example of that, I use this all the time. I take a walk around a lake near my house every morning, and it's very popular. It's beautiful, and there are a lot of people walking around the lake. So when I pass somebody who's, let's say, over 40, they'll nod their head, they'll smile, they'll acknowledge my existence, and I'll do the same for them. When I pass somebody in their 20s, they walk right by like they didn't even know I was there. And I think that's a symptom of how we've become much more isolated. The more access we have to communication, the more isolated we've become.
Beautiful in the terms of seeing that. I can ring true to that. Last week, my wife and I also were walking around our lake right by our home. And there was a gentleman who walked by. He might have been maybe mid-20s, late 20s, around there. And he didn't say nothing to us. I looked at him. He looked away from me, and that was it. And typically in Texas, I'm talking about people who can't stay out of your business, right? You might be in a bad mood and they want to say good morning to you. How are you doing?
Tennessee's the same way, right?
Yes. And I was like, wow, like what's happening? I was like, is Texas changing or is it just the age group? And I saw he was young, but then sometimes you can get a young person that's just super on board. So it's sometimes like people can be very, communicative and they can like talk to people. And then some people it's like the end of the world for them. And I know with our schooling today, it becomes challenging for people to have good communication skills because they spend most of their day isolated. They're at their desk. They might have their Chromebooks or laptops now. They have their phones if they're allowed to use phones in schools because the school doesn't have money. So they're allowed to use their phone for certain things. They have their tests and things like that. But for the most part, they're isolated. They are told to raise their hand if they want to speak and to not speak out when the lessons are going on. With this type of education going on in the school systems, we can see in the past 200 years that schooling hasn't necessarily changed drastically.
No,
It's
it
still the same idea of education for the normalized schooling, but yet we have different results from the people who went to schools in the 1950s versus the 2020s. Why, even though school has fundamentally stayed the same, have people not have adapted, even with technology or without it?
I think as a former educator myself, I can speak a little bit to this. I think the biggest difference is that in earlier generations, the parents were much more involved in the actual education of their children. In other words, they would help their children with their homework. They would insist that their children did their homework. I remember when I was a kid, all we had was the telephone to talk to our friends when we weren't out playing with them. And the rule in the house was you can't get on the phone until your homework's done. And I was raised by my grandmother, who was a teacher. So she not only made me make sure the homework was done, she looked at it afterwards to make sure it was right. So the parents were very involved in the children's education. I think too many parents right now look at the education system as it's your job to educate my kids. It's not my job. It's everybody's job. Another thing that I noticed that's different is if you got in trouble in school, in earlier generations, you got in trouble twice because you got in trouble at school and then you got in trouble at home because your parents already got the phone call that you got in trouble in school. It's more likely for younger generations, the parents take the side of the child instead of taking the side of the school. So there's very little discipline, self-control, and respect in the education system today. And I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah, it's the helicoptering of the parents. They're very protective, and I love a protective parent, but to take away the struggle of the child, at one point, they're not going to have mom and dad around.
I think being overprotective is a huge problem for young kids because they don't learn. I don't know how you used to solve problems out in the schoolyard when you were a kid, but when I was a kid, sometimes you get in little fights and there were disagreements and you found a way to work it out. You learned conflict resolution skills. You learned the pecking order of that particular group, where you stood in that pecking order. And you learned that you could be friends with somebody and still have disagreements with them. I think also, if you got hurt on the schoolyard, you rubbed some dirt on it and you went on playing, unless something got broken. But for the most part, you were on your own. You learned how to solve problems on your own. You learned another thing. You learned how to be alone. When you were in your room, when you were a kid, younger, older people like myself, you didn't have all of the toys, the video games, the phone, the laptop, the iPad, whatever it might be, to keep you constantly stimulated. You had to learn, you had to be creative in finding your own ways to entertain yourself. And I think those things help to mature people, help them to be problem solvers, and help them to resolve conflict. I mean, if somebody called me a name was like when I was a kid, I didn't say I'm offended by what you just said to me. That wouldn't even have occurred to me. I would have said, oh yeah, and you're another one. And we had a little verbal spat, and then we got over it, and we'd have been fine.
Yeah, it's that adversity that is necessary for development, not just a kosher life or like a kosher life. It's just everything is smooth. I think it's the ruggedness that can truly make a person who they are. Think of movies that probably halfway into the movie, something negative happens. Rocky, for example, he loses, he gets knocked down, and then it's that journey to get back up, to climb. Yet, I think when people get knocked down, they feel that knockdown. They go, that didn't feel good. It's scary to get back up. And most people, they stay down, maybe not figuratively, but like mentally, it's like they don't want to get back up. They don't want to try again. The anxiety is taking over. The fear, for progression, all of that right there. People just say, okay, let me find a nice, comfortable spot where I can be, and that's where they reside. But yet, in that comfort zone, we know long term is not going to bring about the abundance that most people are looking for. Most people, they want to maybe run big corporations or have a lot of money or to be in healthy, strong relationships. But yet, if they're struggling with themselves or struggling with even just basic communication, how can someone in our world today thrive? And you brought up a part early on about inner peace. And I couldn't imagine someone who's afraid to even acknowledge themselves or acknowledge areas where they need improvement, where they can have true inner peace. In your works, have you found that inner peace is something that is earned, or it just happenstance and they find it?
I think it's something that to a large extent is earned by a person's mindset, by how they approach life. I think some people, the old glass is half full or the glass is half empty. There are differences in how people approach life that can have a dramatic impact on how they live their life and the satisfaction they get out of it. If you're looking for good things to happen in your life, good things are more likely to happen. If you're looking for bad things to happen in your life, bad things are more likely to happen. And you talk about, about the struggle, that a lot of people don't want to go through the struggle. When they get knocked down, they don't want to get back up. Every successful person that I've ever worked with in the last 45 years has not had a smooth ride up to the top. They've had disappointments. Some of them have gone broke 3 or 4 times. Their companies have gone under. They've experienced personal loss. They've experienced professional loss. But they kept on moving. They learned from those experiences and tried not to make the same mistake twice. There's so many new mistakes to make. You don't want to go through life making the same mistake over and over again. If you're going to make a mistake, make a new mistake. And make a mistake of enthusiasm. Make a mistake of doing something, trying something. And I think that's what separates the entrepreneurs and the successful people in all areas of life. They're willing to try. They're willing to fail because if they fail, it brings them one step closer to success. I don't know if you work with salespeople. I do. I've worked with salespeople my whole career. And you ask any good salesperson, and I ask, what's the second best answer you can get when you're asking for the business? And the second best answer is no. The first best answer is yes, obviously. But every good salesperson knows that the more no's they get, that brings them that much closer to the next yes. And a lot of bad salesmen are afraid to get the no, so they don't ask the question. And if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no.
Exactly. People, they're definitely living life on the hard track today because it might seem like it's common sense to say, hey, if this is what you want, say it, versus let's dance around the topic and hope the person can figure out what you're trying to imply to them. Yet I find the people who are successful are the people who are deliberate on life or going to be deliberate to life, where they know what they want. They're assertive. Think of men going on dates with women as just as an example.
Right.
If you see a beautiful girl across the way, maybe she gives you some eye contact, like, hey, come over and talk to me. But if you don't make any initiation or attempt to go over there, she's not yours and she never will be. And
Right.
it's just because you were feared to get to know maybe. And she's over here saying yes.
And that's the same point as the salesperson. If you don't make the effort, and if you get a no, you're no worse off than you were. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, attractive women find themselves not going on many dates because people are so afraid to ask them out. And if you ask them, why'd you go out with that guy? And she'll say, well, he asked me.
It's amazing how the world is today, where it's almost like we take what we can get rather than we get what we truly desire. Like most people, they will just fall into a 9-to-5 job, whether it be a career given to them by their parents or from the school. They felt as if I'm going to do accounting, or I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm not saying that these professions by any regard are to be belittled. I'm just saying that sometimes a profession might not be yours. You might not find true purpose in being a lawyer, or true happiness in being a doctor. Yes, you are helping people and you're making their life better, but at some time or at some point, you have to look at your life and see if you are burning out. Are you miserable? Are you waking up with joy to go do what you want to do? Or are you just trudging along because you have a mortgage to pay and a family to feed? I can't imagine how many people are doing things because of their obligations versus their purpose.
Most people. And they kind of fall into it over time. And eventually you feel trapped because you've been doing that job for a while and you've gotten pretty good at the job and you're making enough money to live on, maybe putting a little money away, you're putting your kids through school. And you feel like if you took a risk and did something else, you'd be putting everything you've worked for up to now in jeopardy, even if you hate what you do. But I find it interesting that most people don't really hate what they do. They usually hate where they're doing it or who they're doing it for. I mean, the same job that can make you miserable with one organization can make you really satisfied and fulfilled with another organization. It's the same job. You're doing the same thing. but the culture around you, the people that you're with. You walk down the street and you see two people laying bricks, and you ask one person, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm laying bricks." You ask the other person, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm building a skyscraper." It just depends on how they look at it.
Yeah, very true. Life can be definitely a riddle for some people, where it's like if you ask a blind person, you know, what does the sun or the sky look like? They can give you the, like from books and say, hey, it's blue, it has clouds and things like that, versus a person who's truly present versus because it's someone else that says the sky's blue and it has clouds. So same thing as a blind person. But if someone who can truly see and can truly feel, they'll say the sky is vibrant. It can have different colors of blue, yellow, red. It can have clouds of different colors. It could be gray, it could be black if it's raining. So it's like they go so much more in depth versus just someone who says the sky is blue. It's just very blanket. And I think a lot of people are just living on the surface of life. And what happens on that surface is you don't get down to the roots. And if you think about if you ever had a garden, if you ever watered a plant or a tree, you don't just water the stems and you don't just water the stump, you water the roots. And from there, that's where the plant can grow. It can get the support, the nutrients, everything it needs in order to blossom into something, a vegetable, a fruit, a beautiful flower. And yet people, they have the same idea of life where they are trying to get down to the roots. It's just that they think that this was enough to water the stump or to take care of the stump, and they don't see everything else that's below that.
Well, they want the outcome. They want the result of the effort without the effort. And I think if I interview people for jobs all day, every day, that's kind of my job. And it's amazing that kids coming out of college now, they want, first of all, a salary that's totally unrealistic. They want a company car. They want 3 weeks of paid vacation. They want a 401k. They want stock options. They want it all, but they haven't done anything to prove their worth yet. So they want the outcome without the effort. And they don't see the business owner, the person who started that company. They're not exposed to what that person went through. Maybe that person mortgaged their house. Maybe they took out loans. Maybe they worked 80-hour weeks. They did whatever it took to build that business. And now maybe they've got a yacht, maybe they've got a Mercedes, whatever it might be, but they put forth the effort to get the result. And people want the easy result without the effort. And it just doesn't work that way. Life owes you a living, but you have to work hard to get it.
Yeah, very true. I touched base on this, and it was the title of your book. It's You're Making This Way Too Hard. Find your easy way to enjoy life.
Right.
And I think of just the hard part. And it's so true, as we've been talking about. We've been talking about how difficult we are as people, just making our life difficult. We are living on a one-way street and we're just making it the hardest possible path. Think of if you lived in New York, for example, and there's a big snowstorm.
No, thank you.
And there's just snow everywhere.
Right.
But instead of it being a one-way street, it's a two-way road. And now there's only one path for a one-way. So you're trying to get down one way and the other car is trying to get down the other way. And it's just damn near impossible to fit in. You have to go over the snowbanks. You're messing up your bumper and everything. And before you know it, you're at the end of it. But then the progression for you to get there was so much more work. Now, what people do typically in the neighborhood, if they can all come together, is they notice that the city is not doing their job and they're not coming to plow the streets. And so the people would unite on that street and say, you know what, let's make this a two-way street again, versus let's just keep it a one-way street as what the city gave us. So they go out together, they unify, they all shovel. And by the end of the evening, they now have a two-way street again. But it goes to that title. Many people are just keeping life hard. They're keeping it the hard way. And there had to be a reason why you chose that title. There had to be a reason why you wrote this book, because our conversation is definitely pointing at most people are just looking at life to be hard.
Right. Well, the reason I wrote the book is that in my work, I work with a lot of very successful people, business owners running big companies, leaders. But I noticed that a lot of them weren't enjoying life as much as, frankly, as much as I thought they should. And then I started to think about it and try to dig into why is that? And I think many successful people feel a tremendous sense of responsibility. They feel like they have to do it all. They feel like they're in charge of all the decisions. They feel like their family, the company, the people who work in the company, they all depend on them. So their response to that is, I've got to work harder. I've got to do more. And my advice to them when I'm coaching them is, you can't do more if your plate is already full. I mean, you can't put 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag. You just can't. So my advice is start taking things away. And they said, what do you mean take things away? I said, well, the first thing you can take away is all of the toxic relationships in your life that are sucking the time and the life out of you and you don't even realize. They could be business relationships. They could be personal relationships, whatever it might be. The second thing is you're not taking care of yourself. And I think it's critically important for everybody to put a focus on self-care, and it's not being selfish. You can't take care of anybody else if you don't take care of yourself first. And that's not just physical, but physical is very important. If you don't have your health, you really don't have anything. So get in as good a physical condition as you can. Don't neglect your physical health because you're running 50 miles an hour trying to build or grow or keep your business where it is. I think you need to take time to relax, take time to decompress. So many people feel like if they're not doing something at every moment, they're being lazy or they're being unproductive. And I think that's very wrong. I'm a big advocate of taking a 20-minute nap sometime during the day. It'll recharge the batteries, and studies have even shown that it makes people more productive. And if it's not taking a nap, take 20 minutes to just shut your brain off. Meditate. Listen to some calming music. Do something to recharge yourself every day and recognize what time of the day is best for you to do that. Because people are most productive at a certain period of the day. And that varies from person to person. So I can't really make it's got to be 2:00 in the afternoon. That happens to be the time when I need to take a little rest. And then, by 2:30, I'm ready to go after it again. But I think, self-care is really important. And the third thing is quit beating yourself up. Say nice things about yourself to yourself. People are so self-critical. They feel like they should be doing something at all times. They should be. And when they start saying should all the time, I tell them they've got a case of psychological diarrhea. That's where you should all over yourself. So you need to stop worrying about what you think you should be doing and do what's going to bring you the most contentment, inner peace, and joy. You can still be productive and be joyful while you're doing it. You don't have to be miserable. And so many people think that in order for something to be a worthwhile endeavor, it has to be difficult or it has to be challenging. And some things are challenging, but if you approach it with a joyful mindset, you're much more likely to get good results.
Going back to the nap conversation, I'm a nap enthusiast. I have young children. So my son, he's 3. My daughter, she's 1. And this has to be at least the top 3 rules of being a parent. If they're taking a nap, you're taking a nap.
You're taking a nap.
So if they go down, I say, I'm coming too. So this idea is to recharge with them.
I remember when my first son he's 52 now, but when he was born, I remember we brought him home from the hospital. He was really young. I'd put him on my chest and take a nap with him. When he was asleep, I'd take a nap with him, and it was calming to him to feel my heartbeat, and it was calming to me to feel his warmth. And we really bonded that way. But the nap is, don't discount the nap.
Oh, yeah. There's pictures of me just sleeping with the kid and just on the sofa, just randomly throughout the day. And I don't mind them. It's funny if you look at it, it's like, oh, yeah, they kept you up all night or something like that. But the reality is they're sleeping, I'm sleeping. Uh-huh. I think about something you said or something that came to my mind when we were talking about how people can figure out how to live life a more joyful way. And I think of kids with this idea of naps and everything, where children typically are more joyous about life. They're excited about what's to come. And then somewhere in the middle, it's like all the play kind of vanishes. And I understand responsibilities come in, yes, but it seems like the joy is just sapped away. And then hopefully, if they do the work toward the end of their life, they appreciate all the life that they had or all they have left because they realize that they have more years behind them than in front of them. Is there a way where people can look at that lens of life as that child and they can maintain it all the way throughout their whole life? Or is it something that we have to learn? Okay, this is good, this is bad, then we can appreciate the good.
You really make a great point. And I even had a couple paragraphs in my book about that very thing. Children all over the world, doesn't matter where they are, they could be under the most impoverished conditions you can imagine, wherever that might be. Those kids are out there, 4, 5, 6 years old. They're playing, they're laughing, they're having a good time. They're finding joy just in being alive and being able to experience some things. And so I don't think that the idea is to find joy. I think the idea is to rekindle the joy that you had when you were a little kid. And it's still in all of us. It's as simple as finding something to be grateful for every day. Finding something that gives you joy, doing something that gives you joy every day. And it could be a simple thing, something to be grateful for. Let's say you drive out of your driveway in the morning and you see a rainbow. I mean, it's not much, but it's a rainbow. And if you decide that that rainbow is going to make me feel good right now, then it is. It could be somebody compliments you about something. It could be that your drive was a little bit easier than it usually is. It could be you got a good night's sleep. It could be you had a great breakfast. It could be very simple things. But if you decide you're going to be grateful for those simple things, every day is a compilation of things that you should feel grateful for. And the example that I use in my book is that if you woke up in the morning and there was $1 million at the foot of your bed, you'd be pretty happy, right? Right? Everybody would. If I told you that I'll give you $1 million right now, but you won't wake up in the morning, would you take that deal? No, nobody's going to take that deal. So just the act of getting up in the morning is worth more than $1 million, but nobody looks at it that way.
I think everyone, they want the money so they can use it. They want their cake and they want to eat it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this idea where I think many people, they have this, like, I want to call it the symptom of despair. It's like they're giving themselves a darkness over their life where they know, if we use that analogy of the money, it's like my life is more important than the money, yet they slave away every single day, neglecting their health, their families for the money. But it's not that high dollar amount. It might
Right.
be, $500 a day or something for most people, if that. So it's like they're killing themselves for $500 a day, and they're not really truly addressing the symptoms of of their life as a whole. Yes, they think it's going to be temporary, and maybe some magic pill at 65 is going to make them better when they retire. But the reality is, most people reach 65 and they have maybe 10 years left, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, money, I'm fortunate. I get to work with businesses, and a lot of the executives make a lot of money. And if money made people happy, there wouldn't be so many psychiatrists in Beverly Hills, right? I mean, there's that some of the happiest people in the world, and studies have confirmed this, are the poorest people economically, but they're not poor in spirit. They're rich in spirit. I mean, they recognize that life itself, relationships, striving for something that meaningful is much more important than material things. Stuff does not make people happy.
I think of now the solution for how people can choose to live or how people can start to address the situation that they're in. I know we have this book right here, the one that you wrote, but like, is there anything else that people can do? I know before we got on the call, we were talking about some type of workshops, seminars that people can like possibly partake in to get their mind in a new mindset.
What I wanted to do is take my message out to a broader range of people. So I created a course, Enjoy Life the Easy Way. And it's basically 8 modules. It's 8 coaching sessions. And I priced it at a price where really anybody, if they're serious about finding more joy and inner peace and contentment in their life, that can afford, it's $229. And if they follow the course from beginning to end, they'll realize what an impact it made on them and how moving forward in their life, they'll have a different attitude, a different mindset. They'll be able to build stronger relationships. They'll take more control of their life. They'll have a more realistic attitude about money. There's a section in there about money because I think money is much better at making people unhappy than it is at making people happy. So if they wanted to take a look at my course, go to angelovalenti.com and find it in there. Enjoy Life the Easy Way. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, before everyone starts running off to that, I do want to talk about this idea of personal development. Because I think what happens with people is that they love to start, but they hate to finish. And I use the word hate, not saying that they don't like it. It's just that they don't do it on a consistent manner or basis. Anyone can start. I can start going to the gym in January. It feels good, it's new, it's fun. And by February, maybe March, I'm like, I don't have time. So it's like we make excuses, even though the things that are going to bring us betterment or a better life, even just looking at the 8 modules, for example, we might start off really good with our money. And then all of a sudden we just implode. And then it's just like we're doing all the wrong things again. How can someone stay consistent if they are following those 8 modules?
Well, the way to stay consistent is and I make it pretty easy in the course, is you have to create new habits. We are all creatures of habits, right? The things we do on a daily basis are pretty much habitual for the most. Okay. So in order for you to change your life, you have to change your habits. And I'm not talking about adding stuff to what you're already doing. I'm saying you can push out the bad habits by replacing them with better habits. And that just takes time. It used to say 30 days to create a new habit. I think it's 60 or 90 days. But if you can stick with something for 90 days, it becomes part of your life. It becomes part. I mentioned I take that walk, and I started that about 10 years ago because a buddy of mine, I noticed what kind of great shape he was getting in. He was overweight, and he started a walking regimen and didn't do anything else except start walking 3 miles a day. And he started to look better, feel better. His weight went down. So I said, by golly, I'm going to try it. And that was 10 years ago, and I still do it every morning, and weather permitting, obviously. And if I can't do it, I miss it. I start to get like withdrawal symptoms from not doing it. So if you can replace unhealthy habits with healthy habits, that's going to go a long way to helping you find more joy and contentment and inner peace. And I mentioned early on about relationships. If you want to change your life, sometimes you have to change your relationships. Not all relationships are lifetime relationships. Sometimes they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if that relationship is not serving you in a positive way, it's time to get out.
Yeah, I know that can be difficult for some people because they develop such a love for a person. And it could be a small thing that changes, or maybe a small behavior that they do. And you might just shove it off as, well, maybe they had a bad day or a bad moment, but you see it just lasting too long, or it just gets even worse. And you have to ask yourself, like, is this something I want in my life for the next 5 years or 10 years? And some people, they would rather not have that conversation with themselves because they don't want to lose a friend or a loved one or a relationship or a spouse. Some people would rather be with the wrong person than to be alone.
Yes. And alone is better. I mean, in some cases, alone doesn't get you beat up, or it doesn't get you emotionally abused,
Right.
or it doesn't turn you into an alcoholic or a drug addict or something other dysfunctional behavior. Alone is better.
Yeah, definitely. Our conversation today is one of so many possibilities, of understanding the mind, of understanding our potential of what can be. But it's not going to be as easy as, all right, I'm going to make this choice and I'm going to do it for a little bit. It's something we have to commit to. As you said, it's something we have to build the habits to.
It has to become part of your life.
It has to become part of us. For everyone, it's going to be different. As you said, it could take 30 days, it could take 90 days. I found it just depends on the person, depends on where their mindset is, depend on what they have going on in their life. But I have found one of the best ways for people to change is to have some skin in the game. And skin in the game can be reaching out to you, Angelo, to look at your book, to look at your course. And then right there, that's an investment in themselves.
Yes.
And it's also them committing to themselves that I would like to change, I would like to adjust, versus, okay, like Angelo said some great things today. I'm going to take it to my mind, but I'm not going to bring it to my heart. So there's a lot of work that people need to do. But before we do, or before they do that work, I would love to get some final words, some final thoughts from you. And then, of course, I know you gave your website earlier, but if you could, please tell people where they can find you, reach out, work with you, and purchase your book.
My final words are, it's possible for you to change your life, but you have to believe it's possible, and you have to work to make it happen. And by work, I don't mean drudge. I mean doing worthwhile things that are going to benefit you and your loved ones and your friends and your coworkers in the long term. And you just have to make it happen. It has to be important enough to you to make it happen. People always have time to do the things that are important. All right. So if you want to find me, it's real easy. www.angelovalenti.com. And I'd love it. Shoot me an email. I've got a link in there for a 30-minute free discovery call if you want to just talk to me about what's going on. I'd love to hear from you. And Michael, I appreciate the opportunity to share my ideas.
All right. Yes. And I love to have guests like yourself on, because it brings about a breath of so many years of wisdom versus just, all right, cool, I have this idea, let's see what people think about it. You have been a person who has helped probably hundreds of thousands of individuals and hundreds, if not thousands, of companies be better than what they are right now. And for a person to give themselves that mindset to be better than what they are, wisdom, I believe, and knowledge comes second, is going to be some of the key factors in truly making the changes that they're looking for. Everyone that's listening, you don't have to worry about spelling. If you're driving, don't worry about it. Just hang tight. All his links are going to be right down below, so you can easily find him, reach out to him, and then begin that discovery of your life. So I do want to thank you, Angelo, for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your works.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate the opportunity. This was fun.